You may remember the social media post because Napalm Death shared it. I was the smartass who put his fitness watch on while he was front row at the Napalm Death show at the
All right.
Triffid and found out that a grind show burns 936 calories.
I think that's pretty good. That's not bad, actually, is it? Really,
That's
930.
good.
But it's better when I get down the gym and you go sweating your ass off and you go, oh, you've done 140. And you go, really? Is that it? But there we go.
Yeah, I've stopped relying on it because it's just too unreliable. I just go for time. Whereabouts are you at the moment? You're touring, aren't you?
What's that, mate? Sorry.
Sorry, mate. You're all touring with Napalm at the moment, aren't you?
We did a festival in Spain on Friday night, and then we flew back. Took all day Saturday to get back, which because we have to. Well, you can't use the cheap airlines because we fly with guitars, so it's like we had to go to Amsterdam and change there. So it took ages. They lost some of the baggage. I was a little bit late jumping on there because of that, but so now we got like some summer stuff coming up, July 3rd to 15th, and then in and out really until October when we go to South America for like 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks. So it's not as crazy. We had about 3 months off as well. So yeah, I mean it's just still crazy for me because I've got family and various other projects, and I never quite know what I'm doing, which infuriates.
Just a bit of housekeeping from the top. How long do we have? Is this a half-hour slot, or do you have one after?
I'm okay, mate. It's fine. I mean, whatever you want, really.
Cool. Yeah. Mate, I felt embarrassed because Dark Sky Burial has literally been on my musical to-do list for the last 4 years since he first announced it. And I finally, when I get off of this, went back through it and listened to the entire catalog from start to finish.
That's quite a man.
Oh, did I tell you what? For a guy who's had a pretty turbulent period in his mental health in the last week, Dark Sky Burial has been an interesting soundtrack.
Well, yeah, it certainly feels, it certainly is. I think has been really therapeutic to me. It seems to, sometimes you feel it's certainly because the past 4 years I've been speaking as much as I can to a long-term friend of mine who actually became a Jungian analyst. If you're familiar with that at all, which is like the Jungian analyst. Ungian. So it's more to do with the works and philosophies of Carl Jung, really, who I was not really familiar with at all. I knew of Freud a little bit, but not of Jung. And I think not essentially, but I think anyone, we all have stress, blah blah blah, multiple levels and stuff, but from various things. And I found so after speaking for many years with my daughter's doing, she's off school with sick on, but that seemed to tie in with the music of Dark Sky. It seemed to be almost like, I mean, I certainly suffered a breakdown in the past few years. That's for sure. I can tell you that. It's a bit deep to throw you in there, but there you go. Such is life. And but yeah, Dark Sky's been quite a trip for me, I suppose, to try and get to the point if I can.
I feel like this is basically just you on a laptop with a pair of headphones, or is it more of a larger studio setting?
I have, I suppose, a home studio. It's not massive, it's not a grand thing in particular. We have this, we call it the Napalm Death House because at one point all four of us lived in it at one point. And me and Danny now have the house. It's in Birmingham. It's about 10 miles from where I live. Big tall house in a crazy neighbourhood that we just lived there for years. Well, we lived there for 30 years, really. And of course, I got married and moved away, but not that far. So the studio's there with all a bunch of stuff, and so primarily laptop speakers, and it's something I'd always wanted to do for years and years, really. I've always loved experimental stuff, but was always sidetracked with Napalm. I kind of remember around Fear, Emptiness, Despair, when the sort of the musical climate was quite different. Really getting into it, doing some electronic stuff, but then it was a lot harder, I think, in some ways. And I remember my friend borrowing my Atari ST, and I never got it back. And then just Napalm did what it did, and well, next thing you know, 30 years later, I had a lot of time to kill on a tour with Brujeria, and I was messing around on GarageBand, which is actually quite good for ideas. And then, of course, expanded it into looking at what sound libraries you can get, different things like that. And so, primarily, it's done at home on a laptop, but I've now sort of ventured out into the analog keyboard scenario, and so I think I'm going to move. It's going to go well. Now this last album done, it's going to veer off in multifaceted ways, really, because I'd like to do some shows live and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely an ongoing thing, I guess.
I feel like in the earlier albums were a lot more ambient, and then it felt like there were a lot more elements started coming in. Things, the ideas, I guess, started to get a bit grander, a bit more diverse. Is that right, or am I talking out of my ass? And B,
well, I think I think what I really love about this and experimental music and the way I suppose I've moved forward, just moved since the last Napalm album, is that you do many projects, especially in the metal kind of vein, and not everything's set in stone, but you have a formula. Well, what I like about Dark Skies, it kind of has some sort of formula, but it's a mutating formula, so you can just do. I like to just kind of do almost whatever I want, really, and also I was a little conscious of trying not to repeat yourself in a way. I mean, I'm sure because I'm aware of how I'm structuring the electronic song tracks now and thinking, well, how can I veer away from that in the future? So yeah, it was probably a little bit more ambient, a little bit more laid back. But as it's gone on, it's got a bit more chaotic. And some of my methods, because I went crazy and sort of got a lot of sound libraries. And my theory was being that the more sounds I had, I mean, you look at AC/DC, strangely enough, AC/DC do their thing, yeah. But my thing is, I do my thing as well. But if I've got a palette of 1 million sounds, it's almost like 1 million colors. You can just keep on almost using your formula, but because you're using different sounds, you can really disguise it. It's a bit of a cheat, I suppose, if I'm honest. But it's a good one. But yeah, I like to bring beats in and stuff like that. Sometimes, you can be, I mean, literally, they're trying to sound too pompous. If I'm in a particular mood, or I can literally just find a sound and it seems to externalize what I'm feeling out, and it helps. I go into a bit of a trance sometimes, and I think it's such a. So you say listen to the catalogue, it's quite a lot. I've gone back and listened to some of the earlier stuff, and I have no recollection of actually making it. So God knows, and that was strange. But there you go. Yeah.
There was an overarching concept over 4 albums with the maze concept. Did you always intend for this to be the final album in that? Like, had the maze concept always had 4 steps?
Yeah, I seem to be, even from the very beginning with the first 4, it was 4 albums, again, sort of in a maze, but also the symbols taken from one of in the Tibetan religion, they have a thing where they have the sky burial, and it's you're left out for the vultures. It's like the last gift of the universe. And I kind of became a little bit semi-obsessed with that, really, And then the tower, which you go up to, so there's the tower there, which is the symbol. So that was the 4 of them, and I had this thing for 4. And I was like, why is this attraction to 4? And my good friend says, well, 4 in the ancient times represented wholeness, what are you doing? That's my door. So I guess that was that. So subconsciously, this thing 4 was going on all the time, and then this maze thing is like kind of goes back to one of the tracks, the vertical labyrinth, where we, in life, Jungian terms, possibly psychological terms, we're all navigating this labyrinth. It's quite metaphorical as well, where I think some of his philosophy does speak to creative artists in a way, because we're all on a quest. It sounds kind of strange to put it that way. So yeah, the maze this was the last one of that. I have like 4 album covers for albums I've not even started yet, and 2 albums finished, which will be journeys on the way to that. But I've been told not to get too ahead of myself, because I tend to do that all the time.
Have you given a lot of thought into kind of ideas and concepts as to where you want to go next, or have you just kind of got that artwork?
I do think about that quite a lot. It's quite obsessive. I sit there sometimes going, "Oh, you're going crackers here, lad. You know what's going on," but in a good way, I think. But yeah, because I think about playing live. We did one gig during lockdown, sort of not, which was okay, but I felt a little bit out of my depth. 2 of my friends accompanied me, and they were quite comfortable. I was like, what the hell am I going to do here? And so in the end, spontaneously, I just started reciting this kind of poetry. And not poetry, well, sort of. I had the titles from the first album. I wrote lyrics to them instead, and just said that. And so that was quite interesting. Again, you can do kind of what you want within reason, I think. So I think I'm thinking about where to take it live. And I also but I don't want to be one of those people who are just on there with a laptop. To me, that's just like that, So I'm overthinking that. I'm going, well, what do I do live? But yeah, musically, there's a lot of ideas. What's really interesting about some of this stuff, because I'm thinking about before doing a show, is I went back on some of the old tracks and found some primitive versions of them. And I just sped the tempo up, as you can do, of course, And I'm like, well, this is kind of the same track but different now. And I thought, I can kind of add different sounds, and actually I can put some vocals over it. So you do a completely different version of this track live. So, but music, I have two albums sort of finished, which at some point will come later on. And then it'll make more sense in the journey. It's a constant journey, so I don't think it'll actually end up at one particular point. But yeah.
It's going to sound a bit left of field, but were you ever a gamer? Right.
I love playing. I mean, I used to love playing games until now. I have my PlayStation 5. I kind of look at it fondly. I really want to play the Harry Potter game. Got to play the Star Wars game. I've got a couple of questing games. And I think my daughter Zumi always says to me, "Oh, one of these days you'll play them." I'm like, "Yeah, when I'm about 70, and I got some time on my hands, But I do. I love playing. The sort of role playing or the adventure games. Love them.
Yeah. Where I was going with that was that some of the early Dark Sky Burial albums reminded me of the music for Half-Life, the original from 1998, and it just made me think of you would be a dab hand at doing video game soundtrack work if you ever have a moment's peace that you want to fill up as opposed to relax.
No, I know that there's a game called Scorn that came out, and over here, the publishing company got I think 30 seconds of a Dark Sky track attached to the trailer for that, so that was really nice. I'd love to get into that stuff, and I do think locally there's a gaming company. Of course, the problem I find sometimes is, like, as fast as you think about it, if you don't act on it, you forget about it, and then something else just takes its place, and you're like, "Oh, I was meant to do that. How many months ago was that?" And it's just life just seems far too much chaos at times, I find, but that's the way it is, But yeah, I'd love to get into games, really, because I think when you're working on something specific, that's sometimes a little bit not easier, but It's nice to have a direction, really. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt there was a lot of 80s industrial in some of these. I imagine these would have been maybe some influence of records that you came up with.
Yeah, it's a couple of my friends do. They do a lot of this stuff, and yeah, they'll say, "Oh, well, some of this stuff's not what I would use now." But I love Skinny Puppy, and Coil is a massive influence for me, really. And I just kind of like what I like, And not being a master of mixing, I suppose, I just kind of do things that work for me, really. And you do sometimes worry. You worry if you're getting your own sound together. I think probably I am, but yeah, I love the '80s industrial stuff. Really,
What were the reactions to your book?
pretty good actually. I mean, it's done okay. I mean, when they first suggested it to me, you had to do a. They wanted to get a bunch of signatures together to see if they could get enough to make it worthwhile. And at first, didn't seem like it was going to happen. Then I put a post up, and then it happened. So that was good, But the reactions have been okay. From what people tell me, that they enjoy reading it. It's so that's nice. It's encouraging. It's opened a few doors. Interestingly enough, I mean, I recently did. I went out on a small book tour with Jazz Coleman from Killing Joke. And that was interesting to do, to see his perspective on Killing Joke and stuff. And it's met a couple of interesting people through it, which is good, And yeah, it's. I thought, why not? But it's going down okay. Yeah, why not?
I asked Barney because I interviewed Barney in the promo to your Australian tour last year, and that's when the book was coming out. And I was like, "Yeah, so Shane's got a book coming out. Are you nervous?" It's like, "Nah."
No, I think Barn was kind enough to write something in there, and I said, "Well, go for it. Don't be shy."
Yeah.
Kind of part. It's certainly what I've been trying to learn about myself, which is incredibly difficult, I think, for anyone. Is like sometimes you have to. I'm really at that stage where I'm trying to face. I mean, yeah, people might see this jovial, smiling person, or sometimes, or whatever, but that's not all me. I mean, there's a darker side. There's sometimes you say things you shouldn't say. So it's trying to bring that all together and work out trying to form the best form of you as you move forward. It's very difficult sometimes to do that, but so I said, Barney, I said to all my friends who are going to write, don't hold back, please, because that's okay, But no, we did that show on the weekend in Spain. It was really nice. We hadn't played together for a long time, and I've had a bit of a rough couple of years, especially the past year, where I really didn't know what I was doing, if I was actually going to go back to playing live with Napalm. It just seemed. But now that's changed a bit now, which is good. For me, trying to work out obviously it's what I do. This is what I love to do. But I really struggle from being away from home for a while, and I stopped drinking beer for about 10 years, and I started drinking again. And around the time my mum passed, not a good idea.
Mm.
Slipped off the edge a little bit, But there you go. Yeah.
Have you since got rid of it again, or is it still around?
Yeah. I mean, my friend always says to me, he says, "Look, admit it. You will drink again, so you can't. And that's you never think about things like that. See, and that's one of the many steps you have to take, and you have to go, hold on a second. You're right, because I found in COVID for sure. I've been I've been doing Napalm when I was 19 years old. I'm 56 now. I've always been on the road. And so you have this thing where you're that person when you're away, and then you're, it's a little different in some respects. And of course, when COVID, it was like, bloody hell, there's no getting away from it, really. I think, and that sort of opened the doorways to a lot of self-realization at that point.
Oh, good on you, man. I'm over 6 years sober myself, and it is the best thing I ever did. So,
yeah, I mean, I'd stopped for a long time, and it was great. And then God knows what clicked in my head. As we went back out on tour, I thought, oh yeah, no, no.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate. Anytime you ever, you find yourself negative self-talking and feeling bad about yourself, I want to share something with you. I've interviewed Kevin Sharp twice. I absolutely love him to bits. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah,
And once he was literally interviewing me while he's like, "Oh, hang on a second. Shane's on an airplane and he's complaining, because apparently you're on some shit flight, and you were texting him saying how shit it was." And
yeah.
I got him talking about you, and I was like, "How would you describe your relationship with Shane?" And he described you as the closest thing he'll ever have to a brother. And I summed it up by saying, so if Kevin Sharp wakes up in a hotel room with a dead hooker in the bed, the first person you're calling is Shane Embury, and he's like, "Yep, absolutely." So there you go.
That's encouraging to know.
Mate, at this point, when can you see Napalm re-entering the studio?
That's a very good question. That's been something that's kind of been niggling at me for quite a while, and probably contributed to to part of my dilemmas, I suppose. But I think it'll be a bit patient. And our long-term producer, Russ Russell, has been quite ill recently. He had a major operation, and he's getting better. And I think for us, we're really holding off until he recovers for a start off. But I think we've also been touring like crazy. I have a lot of music, a lot of riffs, a lot of ideas of where I want to take the next record. And I'm hoping now, finally, that over the summer, I want to rehearse probably 4 to 5 tracks with Danny, which I've had for a while. And then I spoke to Russ. I saw Russ a few weeks ago, and he was hopeful that we'd start recording some music in September. Fingers crossed. So we'll do it in sections like we did the last record, really. And of course, there's some semi-concrete ideas, but usually what happens is once we get in there, anything can happen because Russ is like a fifth member of the band in a way. So Danny sort of, I just wanted to go in, and Danny was like, "Man, I got to rehearse." I'm like, "Well, it doesn't really matter because you can rehearse your drums for ages, then the red light goes on and you forget it. So it's best just to be bang, old school. Catch it while you can." Everyone, Pro Tools, yeah, they're love and hate them, but we can piece the songs together and it's fine. My theory is that you have a million gigs to play the songs, The studio is like catching things spontaneously and getting that down, really. But I think for Danny, he wants to sort of have a rough idea of what he's doing. I'm almost like, I've done a few recordings lately where it's just, I just see what happens. So almost like the older days in a way, but more stranger. So I think good things will come from that September session, and that'll get us on the road to the next record. Yeah, there's a lot of ideas, and especially because messing with doing the Dark Sky stuff and other stuff. Not that it's going to be electronic. It'll be the Swedes as my daughters do. We do. I'm trying to read sign language from my daughter, if possible. I think there'll be a mixture of some stuff going on. Obviously it'll be very heavy as always, but I think there might be some pretty strange stuff coming in there as well.
On a Napalm album, never.
Well, within reason, I suppose. We won't be doing any Nitzer Ebb covers or anything, but it'll be.
Need I remind you that on your last album you released 3 singles and 2 of them weren't even grown. So.
Oh yeah. So there'll be some oddities, but yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. As long as Russ is feeling up to it, in September we can make a start. Because it's kind of looking overdue, especially for me personally, in a way. Because even though Throws came out in 2020, we actually started recording it towards the end of 2017. Yeah, it's a long time for me. So even though people, I'm like itching to get something new down, especially. And Johnny's with us now. Been playing guitar with us for a long time live, and he's got some interesting idea. He loves to mess around with effects pedals, and I like the idea of creating some walls of sound and just seeing. I can imagine some chaos kicking in, and that's good. Yeah.
So has he pretty much settled into the guitarist role for Napalm these days?
Yeah, for me, he's the guitarist with us from Napalm. I mean, we've never really said Mitch is in or out. I mean, Mitch had the opportunity to come back at any point, but I think life has just taken so many corners for him. He's in the States now. He didn't really, and I can relate to him because at the time he was having his stress about touring, his family was very young, and I relate more than ever now than I did probably a few years ago. And I think we were supportive, but I think we should have been more supportive in some ways. But he moved to the States. He seems generally happy. I speak to him once in a while. But Johnny's, he's been playing live with us for 10 years now. It's a long time, So me, he's the guitarist really for Napalm. I can't see why you would not be, We'll get on. He's been playing the riffs enough to know them. It's muscle memory, or that kind of vibe now. So yeah.
Awesome. Shane, this has been rad, mate. I have been trying to get an interview with you for years, and I kept missing, like Insidious Disease, I think it was. I got your Offsider. I've done Venomous Concept. I keep doing your projects, and every single time I'm like, hey, I've never spoken to Shane. I'd love to. And it's taken Dan Volahov to find
that's good. Yeah, Dan's a great guy. He's helping me out with my little venture, and so we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, the Australian tour was great. I loved it down there. I always love it down there. It's there's nice weather, good food. I kept away from the beer, so it was all right. Well, mostly.
That, and you added some much needed colour to my.
Yeah, it's great. That's gone down pretty well. My wife wears that shirt. I think my daughter wants one. I want to get a small size for it. But yeah, they love that one. I like that. It's a good irony, Yeah, that's me. It's cool. Yeah. All right, nice one, mate. That's good. Brilliant.
No worries, mate. All right, have a great day, mate.
Take care, buddy. Take care, mate.